You've been told that you have to love yourself first before anyone can love you. But what if I told you that isn't entirely true? And it might be what's keeping you lonely. I grew up at a time when self love was presented as this magic cure for every pain and suffering we hadn't yet diagnosed. And as a therapist and just somebody who likes to observe life and relationship trends, I struggled with the love yourself first or self love platitudes. Like many of you, I've seen the worst and the best of these ideas manifest in the mental health landscape. And I was really starting to think about this particular topic of self love when I was reflecting on trends such as relationship recessions or the dissatisfaction in dating relationships online and just loneliness in general. And obviously, this loneliness epidemic is nothing new. We're all very starved for intimacy, which is quite frankly ironic given the fact that we are hyper connected. But we can all make some intuitive guesses about how that's come to be. And I'm not just talking about surface level connections, which there isn't anything wrong with that, but I'm talking about real connections. But most of us were never taught what that actually looks like and feels like. And for that reason, I think so many of us struggle to find satisfying relationships. Or it might be why so many of us turn to these faux relationships, mental fantasy escapes of limerence or situationships, or even develop some sort of parasocial relationships or addiction. Because at the end of the day, we all have an innate desire to connect with another. Even people who are sociopaths or narcissists, they get lonely too. And even if theirs is more of a cognitive empathy or some sort of transactional connection, they still need people. But we've cheapified the meaning of intimacy with another person. And when I say intimacy, I'm not even just talking about the physical connection or the casual conversations that, again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a place for all of that, especially, day to day, like with a cashier or work colleagues. But what is missing for so many people is this soul connection, which sounds impossible or maybe a fairy tale now, maybe not. The kind where you truly allow yourself to be seen by someone and where you have somebody you can bare your soul to about anything without judgment. The difficult part about it is that requires vulnerability. You have to be willing to put yourself out there. Tim Fletcher, a expert on complex PTSD, puts it best that intimacy requires vulnerability and authenticity. And you really can't connect deeply with others until you know some stuff about yourself, your favorite band or preferences, and likes and dislikes. But that's, again, just the surface of connecting. To me, self-love is about developing self-awareness of the parts of us that we don't even feel comfortable admitting to ourselves, let alone another person. But how well you know yourself can be indicative of the ways that you show up in a relationship, your vulnerabilities and sensitivities. You don't necessarily have to know yourself on that level. There's many people who walk around unconscious of their emotional patterns and who hurt themselves and hurt other people Not all the time, but a lot of the times. And not know why, because they haven't taken that time. That process requires you to be willing to go to those places of discomfort. I can understand why people might not want to do that work to process their stuff. That vulnerability is terrifying. It's showing up with no mask, no filters, no distractions. It's about not always liking what you discover. That discomfort is required for deep emotional connection. So I'm presenting another contradiction. You can't really experience real love or real intimacy without being in relation to other people. And I don't mean just jump into a relationship. I mean that when we're by ourselves, we can be whoever we want. It's when we're in relation to other people where our stuff comes out to play. It's not this neat little box you check off before you're allowed to love someone else, or once you're perfectly healed. Because that self-discovery and self-love is an ongoing process. So I don't fully buy into this idea that you have to love yourself first before you love anyone else. At least not the way that it's thrown around. Because really, some people use that as a shield or a defense against intimacy, real intimacy. And really, why would anyone want to do that? When we talk about all the great qualities of being in relationship with other people, we're forgetting that relationships require a level of vulnerability, meaning that we put ourselves at risk of getting hurt. Some people say that they're working on self-love, that they're on this perpetual journey of self-healing that does not allow them to truly see themselves accurately, or to not be able to tolerate their own imperfections and that of others. And so they hide and they isolate, and that loneliness grows. And yes, it can feel unsafe at first to put yourself out there, risking your judgment or rejection or abandonment. But that vulnerability piece is a requirement. Most people think when they think self-love, they're thinking of complacency, that you're supposed to love everything about yourself, and that would mean that there's no room for change. But that's not what it means, at least not to me. This messaging might not resonate with everyone until you felt the weight of truly loathing yourself. You might not be able to fully grasp why it's so important to learn to love yourself. Without self-love, it's very easy to make decisions that are self-destructive. You might stay in a relationship too long, or starve your body until you have a perfect image. I see this happen all the time. People and whole groups prey on this vulnerability, whether it be cults or self-development courses. People feel they need to be a part of in order to be lovable, to be worthy. But they get caught in the traps of feeling like they're never enough. So this whole self-love journey becomes a trap. No amount of books or courses will teach you what it means to accept yourself if you don't inherently know that you are worthy. When you don't love yourself, you don't respect yourself, and it leaves you wide open for manipulation. It means that at a baseline, you are good enough and that nothing can diminish you. It doesn't mean that you don't ever need to change, or that there isn't behaviors that or things about yourself that you don't like. It means that you take that. Self-love is also about self-esteem. It is that quiet knowing that you are inherently worthy, even when you're not perfect. And no, your parents didn't need to be perfect either. But in an ideal world, that good enough parenting teaches us to tolerate our own imperfections and handle criticism and keep growing without having to tear ourselves apart in the process. This leads me to something that I see a lot in the people I work with, how they're secretly fueled with self-hatred, but on the outside they can appear very successful. These people are very relentless when it comes to the things that they want. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. They can appear stronger and more confident. But there's the trap again. It's what happens when that hate burns out. The hate that's fueling them always burns out. And it leaves you where you started, hating yourself. You might recognize it in examples like getting a revenge body or that desperate rush to better yourself just to prove someone wrong. Eventually, our old wounds catch up. I remember this one client, and honestly, I've had many like this, who genuinely believed that if she stopped beating herself up, she would somehow lose all motivation. She thought that it was her inner critic that kept her moving forward. But I disagree. We don't have to tear ourselves apart to grow. Excellence isn't perfection, and self-hatred only burns you out. Instead, what if you loved yourself the way a best friend would, or the way you wish a parent had? Firm but supportive, fully committed to your growth, and always honest, even if that honesty isn't easy to hear. There's a study which finds that people are more likely to fill the prescription of a loved one, a pet, and less likely to do that for themselves. We hear so much for others and are afraid to disappoint them. But what if we cared about ourselves the same way? I think the real goal of self-love that I don't hear very often, but I've learned from in the book, The Road Less Traveled, is that love is discipline. When people hear discipline, they usually think of a punishment or corporal punishment, something harsh and filled with hatred. A parent who disciplines a child is committed to that child. A parent who doesn't is neglectful. Discipline isn't necessarily that corporal punishment that most people associate it with. It's about creating stability and structure, which allows a kid to have a predictable environment where they're not constantly in that fight or flight. Many of my clients describe it as waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's the historical emotions that is impacted in the nervous system when you become an adult and after you leave that environment. If you want to learn more, I recommend looking into the adverse childhood experience research. So, what does self-love look like? It means taking risks, even when you're terrified, letting yourself enjoy food without guilt, resting when you need to without shame, making choices that protect your future you, caring for your body and your mind, not because you hate yourself, but because you value yourself, feeling genuine gratitude for the small things, and having a voice in your head that actually feels like it's on your side. That's what self-love looks like to me. What does it look like to you? If you liked what you're watching, and if it resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.